I got you, Pinto. Howdy guys, I'm AutoEdits Jason. That's my helper Pinto the dog, and today we're going to be working on the Tahoe here. Now I was hoping, if you're watching these videos in order on the channel, to be doing a Jeep video this time, but I'm still waiting on the last part I ordered for that video. So we're going to jump the Tahoe in place here. And I have a bit of a dual story arc in this video, which is really a bonus here. We have about 6,000 miles on this thing since the accidental suspension refresh and the lift. And it's time to now rotate the tires. And what I can do here is I want to show you guys a few things I learned on how to really do a proper 2-inch lift on this thing for max performance. And we'll go through a lot of the parts that I installed and give you a kind of midterm performance and evaluation on those parts. So I can save you money on the lift, get maximum performance, and give you an idea of some of the parts performance that we have on this thing. Come on in. So one of the ways I found that I've really maximized my Milestar Patagonias is to rotate them on a very regular basis. I just happen to be doing maintenance a lot because I'm that kind of guy at about 6,000 miles. So I would say your window is 5 to 8 to rotate these things for max performance. I'm on 25,000 miles on my Jeep tires on the Patagonia MTs, and they still have a lot of life left in them. I'm really anxious to try another tire, but they're just in really good shape. So that's the trick to making these things last the longest. So we're gonna go ahead and do a rotation. Now, since this truck, I'm not rotating the spare tire in, like on the Jeep, I'm just gonna do the front tires crossed over to the back. So this one goes to the back rear on the other side, and the back tire is going straight forward to here. Now, getting your tires off is also a great time to just do a full inspection of everything that you've got going on underneath your rig, especially after a four-wheeling trip like our Death Valley trip. So this will give us a good opportunity to check some stuff out, and then me to show you the performance and how some of the things are holding up already. Now, I get asked all the time how I keep all my vehicles, or I guess now just these vehicles, looking pretty dapper over time. And well, it's, you know, I've shown it a few times. It's a little bit of elbow grease and a little bit of luck here. West Coast is definitely helpful. No salt on the roads for the most part, at least where I drive most of the time. And then here is the natural progression of 6,000 miles on the Tahoe after a long trip through Death Valley, Las Vegas, four-wheeling, city rain here in Southern California. So what I do, as you guys saw me do the rattle can restoration, just semi-gloss black, cleaned it all up, and then I come through with my Lucas, what used to be called Toolbox Buddy is now called Penetrating Oil. I'll put that in the link in the description. And don't forget to help support the channel by going to the Amazon store and getting some Grease Monkey gloves. These Bones gloves just rule. And then I just, obviously, brakes. You don't want to get this stuff on your brakes, so I wrap the disc brakes in plastic and just give a little spray. And this is just to keep clean and then to keep it looking nice. You just get it coated like that is about enough. And go in with a stage 2 or stage 3 rag. If you guys aren't familiar with the different stages of shop rags, well, that's because I'm kind of a tightwad, and this would be a stage 1, kind of new, use that for glass and paint and cleaning things. And then stage 2 is kind of greasy but not too greasy, and stage 3 is on its last leg. So we're gonna start like greasy and it's on its way to the trash or the washing machine. So I'm going to start with the stage 3, and then I just come through, and if you notice, this helps just clean all of this stuff off and keep it clean and keep a little bit of coating on there to make it actually look kind of nice and protect it a little bit. And I noticed that it does this over time. It actually it doesn't attract dirt as much as you'd think, especially if you don't go out in the dirt right afterwards, and you just keep it clean, and it makes it easy. It makes it easy to clean. So it's got a little bit of both going on there. So I'll just run through here and give you the example of the before and after of what this looked like. And on the side that we're going to work on, you can see it actually helps clean, and then it keeps it looking pretty fine. And you can fog on another coat of the penetrating oil to give it a little bit of shine afterwards, but this doesn't need it since it's so fresh anyway, and like it's literally just wiping off all the grime from the last few thousand miles. No big deal. And then this will also, having stuff clean, gives you a better eyeball when you go in to inspect. All right, so let's get our wrapping off of our brakes. You could actually spray those down with some brake clean if you want. It's not a bad idea after the first few thousand miles. But let's talk about some of the parts that we got going on here and the performance and my thoughts on them so far. Beltec shocks, the Street Performance shocks are fantastic. I think you guys that are missing out a little bit. Obviously they're a step up from just like the Monroe-Matic or whatever shop store, or even the AC Delco ones. A go-to is the Bilsteins, and I think that what you're missing is the valving on these is a little bit better. The Bilsteins seem to be a straight down the middle, pretty good at everything, but what they lack is, and this is just from my butt dyno, is they don't have the rebound dampening that these have. And rebound, having a little bit more aggressive rebound dampening gives you more body control of a SUV, a vehicle like this on a mountain road. And that is important to me, like especially if you are loaded and are trying to go fast, that just gives you that impression of stability. And so that's what I'm really liking that about these. I encourage you to give those a try. Just watch that Death Valley trip and you can just see how this thing articulated through stuff. You went fast down fire roads, did thousands of miles of highway comfortably. They're actually a quite hidden gem in the performance world. So those were great. The power stop brakes, let's talk about those. I put the Z36 truck and tow package on here with the red powder coated calipers because it was only an extra $100 and something to go ahead and do this, and on a 95 vehicle, that is just not a bad thing to get some updated calipers on there. And then the Z36 pads, and then the slotted and drilled rotors, they look cool and they perform amazing. This truck stops better on 35s, and that's something that made me nervous because I just kept seeing and reading about how these trucks have horrible braking systems, just inherently. Well, knock on wood, this thing brakes amazing. Like, I drive this thing hard because I live here in Los Angeles, and my whole life is about commuting on freeways, going in and out of town for auditions and things like that, and for work. So it gets driven hard in the city miles, and then when I was in the trail, these performed better than the stock brakes on stock tires did. So I actually feel more comfortable and have a little bit more performance with at least get the Z36 kit, Z36 pads and the rotors. Super huge. Thumbs up upgrade on that thing. So those two are the standout highlights, the Beltec shocks and the power stop brakes. This is a just do this. I think the pads and rotors are on my Amazon store for all of the OBS trucks for like $140 for the cross-drilled and slotted pads and rotors for the front. Dude, that's an amazing price for that. So don't mean to get into a commercial for that. Let's see, let's talk about the Kryptonite steering here. Now, I told you in the install, if you watch that, way overkill for this application, but what you gain by doing that is you don't have to worry about it. It's just something that I didn't even think of when I was on the trail, that this was something I had to be careful of or watch out for. You're gonna break other stuff before you break this, and what it does offer you is a very positive steering feel. So, because you have these monster ball joints down here and on the inside there, and that center section, the center link is just so beefy that you just don't get any flex. So you actually have a very nice precision steering. I went ahead and replaced the steering rag joint. So overall feel on this thing, it drives amazing with all the new bushings and stuff. So I didn't have a ton into it. There are some other options, like Holley makes a forged tie rod option that is less expensive than the Kryptonite, so I recommend going that way. So if you want to save a few bucks and not go this bulletproof, but do something that's an upgrade over the stock style, check out the Holley line of forged steering stuff. But for me, that center link is worth it right there for the Kryptonite stuff. So you know, it's just really expensive. Strength costs money in this situation. So that's going on there. All right, let's go look at the back and then we'll talk about the lift. So in the back here, we have an interesting mix of things to talk about, in the sense that mostly let's just talk about how I got the maximum amount of performance out of the 2-inch lift that I went ahead and did on this thing. Now, the Beltec shocks back here, same, it's actually more accentuated the rebound dampening back here, because this is where a lot of the body roll happens on this thing when you're, you know, going down the trail. And so again, huge thumbs up on those. Here, let's just move on into the setup of this and how to get your truck dialed with the 2-inch lift. Now, it's just easy to slap the 2-inch blocks in like I did here. You want to make sure that you get some of the tapered ones that have a little bit of a taper on them so you can adjust the pinion angle. I put the taper towards the front. So here are the things that I had to do to get maximum performance out of this little 2-inch lift and slapping 35-inch tires on this thing. 1-inch wheel spacer. Okay, that ended up being key because I actually measured the track width on these things is a little bit wider in the front from the factory with the IFS than these. So to get, what I noticed is that when I didn't have these wheel spacers on, I was getting a slight bit of rub on the inside of the wheel well here at a little bit of articulation. It didn't even take much to get it, and you can just see it was just rubbing off some of the paint that I put in here. So 1-inch wheel spacer, just got it just perfect to where it wouldn't find the outside and miss the inside. On the whole Death Valley trip where I really put it through its paces, it did pretty great. So that's kind of one of the ingredients. It's a key. I'll put a link to all of these things, or at least things on my Amazon store. So hit the link in the description and you can at least get an idea on the parts. And if you buy it there, it helps me, but if you don't, I get it. Get it where you want, but that gives you the idea of what you're looking for. Then I bought some upgraded bump stops from Skyjacker Suspension, and I ended up cutting one of the lobes of the top section of it off because they actually were too tall. I wanted them to be a little taller than the stock bumps and a little stronger because of the 35-inch tires. You really don't want to have the tire find this inner lip up here. So I ended up putting these in and then cut the one knob off, and that is perfect. There's no rubbing up inside here, which is important, which is great, especially with the 35-inch tires. So that's the second thing. So the spacers, the bump stops, and then the thing that I went overboard and extra credit with, but this has made a huge difference in the driving feel, is that once you do a 2-inch block, your stock anti-sway bar links are now going to be too short. So at full articulation, the stock bar links were 5 inches, and it literally would hold the axle from getting max droop because it was pulling so hard on the back of the sway bar back where the diff cover is. So I went online, I couldn't find, because I knew I wanted 2-inch longer, so I wanted 7-inch links. So if you can find 7-inch suspension, you know, sway bar links, that's what you got to do, but I couldn't find that exact length, so I went to Skyjacker again and bought their 2 to 4-inch lift extension links, and they were too long. They were 9 inches. So I cut them, re-welded them back into the upper bushing mount up there, and I didn't even paint them. I just was in a hurry right before the Death Valley trip and put them back together, and I'll get them off and sand them and paint them here in a minute, but they ride perfect. So 7 inches for a 2-inch lift is absolutely perfect because you want your sway bar to be just about level at ride height, and then that way it gives you the full articulation and the leverage on the back of the vehicle. So those are the keys that I found to making this thing ride fantastic and perform great off-road. Now let's talk about the front, the torsion keys. All right, let's talk about suspension in the front of this thing. This has what's called a torsion bar front suspension. Now, the back has leaf springs, very traditional. You've seen that on trucks for, well, since the horse and buggy days, and works pretty good. It's just an arched piece of metal that suspends the vehicle, and then coil springs on like truck and modern stuff and Jeeps is a wound coil that supports the weight this way. Now, what's good about the torsion bar suspension is that it's a relatively inexpensive thing to manufacture. You support a lot of the weight back here on the vehicle, so you can it's easier to package front wheel drive and front suspension in the front there, because you don't have coilovers and the support that it takes to support the weight of the vehicle up there. So you transfer that back here into the middle of the frame. So I ended up buying one of those 2-inch lift kits that came with front torsion keys that go up inside here. They look like this. This is what your stock torsion key looks like, and the 2-inch blocks that go in the back. And after putting the torsion keys in there, the only difference between the lift torsion keys and the stock ones are that they clock this actual, where the torsion bar goes into this, keys into this thing, it's just clocked a little more, so you can get a little more tweak, because the way you adjust by putting more preload or torsion onto these bars, these bolts go through and actually can put some preload on those torsion bars and will lift the vehicle. The tricky thing is that I have the vehicle exactly where I want it to be height-wise to get the best ride, and you can see it's about 1/8 of an inch off of the actual bolt stop down here. So I'm literally not utilizing the lift portion of those things. And I'm gonna show you why it's important, because what I see people do online, when I watched a bunch of videos on people putting these lift onto their vehicles, is that they crank the torsion key so up to get the lift that they want, and they forget about one crucial aspect of suspension when you need to drive or actually have the thing perform on the road. And that's down travel. And when you crank these things up so far, you have a limited amount of down travel in these suspensions, and you just crank it right to the point where that's not, and there's none left. And I'll show you where that happens up there. And so then you're defeating the whole purpose of one articulation, part of the articulation of the suspension. So as you can see, save yourself some money, use the stock ones. And when I had these stock keys in here, I had these bolts in. You could actually see the wear marks probably 2/3 of the way down. There was plenty of travel in the stock keys. So save yourself some money, get the 2-inch blocks in the back, adjust the keys to the right height in the front, and let me show you about that down travel and the way that works in the front. There you are. What are you doing? Did you inspect the work? Now what I'm doing here is simulating ride height to show you exactly what that down travel looks like, or where you can gauge how much you have left. Because on this vehicle, the down travel is limited by the upper control arm hitting the upper housing of the bump stop here. So when this arm droops down and hits this thing, that's it for your down travel. And that is something that is it's an unsung part of good suspension. One of the main symptoms of having not enough down travel on your rig is that when you hit a sharper bump, like a speed bump at a faster clip, you'll notice that the tire comes off the ground for too long, and you have no control when your tire's off the ground. So that's unnerving, especially if you add speed or stutter bumps on the highway. That is something to pay attention to and be realistic about your rig. If you just go in there and just crank those torsion bars, you're gonna just end up running out of suspension. So right now I have this thing lifted up. It is off, just barely off, the frame rail is off the jack stand here. And so it is now supporting this side of the vehicle's weight. And that shows you how much down travel I have. And that gives you that nice floating suspension travel and control. So as you can see, with this thing drooped out right here, yes, you can get technically this amount of lift, but this just is one of those things that gets overlooked by us dudes that want just to get the thing lifted and make it look good, and then you forget about the actual components and the geometry and the things at play to making your vehicle perform. And to me, that is most important. I want it to look good, and I think that this thing actually does have a pretty neat proportion with the 35 sitting kind of low. And being able to run it like this, the only time that I'm now running into a problem is that I accidentally jumped it a couple times on that Death Valley trip, hitting something pretty fast. And, you know, luckily it rubbed a little bit right up in here in the upper fender well, not bad. And there was a little bit of rubbing on some really full articulation, but the thing did fantastic, you know, beyond my expectations for what I was thinking it was going to be like. And it was great. So pay attention to these few little things. I could save you a few bucks. Don't buy torsion keys. Just go to where you get the height you need. So all in all, I am super pleased with how this thing is performing and doing in the world. I'm just blown away. The Yukon 456 gears with the 35-inch tires is just about perfect. I don't, you know, it climbs any hill I need it to climb. That Grizzly locker is beyond great. I think if I were to have the money and time to wire in a switch, I would do the selectable locker. They have an e-locker for this thing, but this is just so easy. I haven't had to do any of that. I just go drive and it goes everywhere I've pointed it so far. So we'll hopefully keep that up. Hey, where have you been? Where have you been? I'm starting to think you don't like hanging out with me anymore. So there you have it. Hopefully that helps you guys with the OBS trucks here. Save a few bucks for sure on your lift, and learn how to pay attention to those different things. There's always, when you adjust one thing, it's gonna affect another. So learn how to, you know, read the dynamics of your vehicle and maximize it to your, you know, performance experience. So thank you guys so much for watching. Until next time, enjoy your drive. All right, let's slap the tires back on this thing. Where's my dog?